Imagine signing a piece of paper saying you plan to buy a house.
Right.
And immediately, the bank just throws this massive party, they hand you the keys, and they declare the whole housing crisis is completely solved.
Oh, yeah.
And this is all before a single dollar actually leaves your bank account.
Right.
It sounds absurd. I mean, totally ridiculous.
Yeah.
But in the multi-billion-dollar world of global climate restoration, that is kind of the exact dynamic we're seeing right now.
It really is, yeah.
We are confusing the floor plan for the actual down payment.
Exactly.
So our mission for this deep dive today is to explore this massive gap that's opening up right under our feet based on the latest briefings from August 2026. We're really looking at the critical divide between reporting on nature-based solutions and the actual ecological and financial delivery of those solutions. I'm your host, and I'm thrilled to get into this.
And I'm glad to be here to help unpack it.
Yeah.
The underlying theme across all these recent global announcements is that our reporting infrastructure is getting incredibly sophisticated. The ledgers, the databases, the satellite maps, I mean, they have officially arrived. We are tracking intentions and boundaries better than ever in human history.
Right.
But the problem, and this is the big one, is that the capital required to actually do the physical work remains almost entirely unverified.
So we're just building better calculators to count money that hasn't actually shown up yet.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. A perfect illustration of this just happened in Mongolia this past week. The UN Convention to Combat Desertification, the UNCCD, they open their COP17 summit.
Okay.
And the secretariat there explicitly set the tone by calling it a COP of implementation.
Right. Like, we're actually going to do the thing.
Exactly. The entire mandate was supposed to be about putting shovels in the dirt, getting things done. Yet, if you look at the verified record for the week that conference opened, every single finance item on the books stayed categorized as pledged, prospective, or unverified.
Oh, wow.
The counting tools advanced, but the funding, the actual money, did not.
The sources highlight this one specific example that I feel really brings this illusion into focus. The African Development Bank released data on the Great Green Wall Initiative.
Right, the Great Green Wall.
Yeah, which, for anyone who doesn't know, is this massive project aiming to plant an 8,000-kilometer line of trees and vegetation across the entire width of Africa to stop the Sahara Desert from expanding. And the bank states that $33 billion is needed by 2030 to actually make this happen.
And that $33 billion figure, it's grounded in hard physical realities. It accounts for the sheer scale of reversing desertification across the Sahel, the logistics of transporting millions of saplings, the water infrastructure required in these incredibly arid regions, and of course the labor costs.
Right.
So it's a calculation of actual physical need.
Right, a real-world budget.
Right.
But then the report says that more than $19 billion is already, quote, committed. So if you're just doing the basic math, 33 minus 19, you'd think we only have a $14 billion gap, which, I mean, it's still a huge shortfall, but $19 billion sounds like incredible progress.
Yeah.
Until you look at what the word committed actually means in this specific context.
Yeah, that word does a lot of heavy lifting. A commitment in this kind of reporting framework is usually just an aggregate of political pledges.
Okay.
So it might be a joint statement at a summit, or a flashy press release from a coalition of nations. It is not an escrow account filled with liquid capital ready to be deployed to a project manager on the ground in Senegal.
So wait, a press release is literally being treated like a bank deposit on these ledgers.
Essentially, yes. We are measuring reported ambition against estimated need, and the ledger treats that ambition as if it's actual money in the bank.
That's wild.
And it creates a really dangerous illusion. Because reporting documents our ambition, sure, and it can track political agreements, but it fundamentally fails to prove that the capital reached the ground, paid for the local labor, and actually maintained the restoration over time.
So, okay, if we aren't actually measuring the money moving, what are these ledgers actually tracking? Because there were 3 major measurement instruments released just this week in the briefings. And I really want to understand how a finance officer is supposed to use these tools if none of them guarantee that a project is actually funded?
Yeah, it's a great question. Those 3 instruments serve very distinct functions, and treating them as interchangeable is where a whole lot of the confusion originates.
Okay, let's break them down.
So the first instrument is a pure ledger. The International Union for Conservation of Nature, the IUCN, just launched their Global Restoration Achievements database.
Right.
This is essentially a synthesis of official government-reported restoration efforts.
And the headline number they put out is that governments have reported reported 124.3 million hectares as either restored under restoration or under improved management, right?
Yes, which sounds huge, but it's actually a fraction of the global target.
Yeah.
Because the total pledged area across various international frameworks is roughly 1.2 billion hectares. So that 124 million is only about 10.4% of what was promised.
I have to ask about the mechanics of this database, though. Like, if a massive coalition of local farmers in Brazil, say, restores a whole watershed, but the federal government never files the official paperwork with the IUCN, does that restoration exist on this ledger?
It does not.
Seriously?
Not at all. The database is a highly conservative lower bound precisely because it only sums up non-overlapping official figures submitted by governments.
Wow.
It is a ledger of bureaucratic filing. It's not an absolute truth of every tree planted on Earth, so a hectare absent from a government return is completely absent from this global ledger, regardless of what is actually happening in the soil.
So the IUCN database is basically just governments submitting their own homework.
That's a good way to look at it.
But what about, the private sector and the carbon markets? Because there are huge financial stakes there. Are they using this same government homework system?
No, they use a different framework entirely. Which brings us to the second instrument released this week. It's an accounting tool from Verra and Gold Standard, which are two of the major carbon registries.
Right, okay.
They released a tool that compiles corresponding adjustment records to help host countries file their reports under Article 6.2 of the Paris Agreement.
Okay, hold on. Corresponding adjustment records is a really heavy piece of jargon.
It is, yeah.
Break that down for me. What is the actual mechanism there? Like, what exactly is being adjusted?
Sure. So think of it as a way of preventing double counting on a global scale.
Okay.
If a project in Colombia generates carbon credits by protecting a forest, right? And a corporation in Germany buys those credits to offset their emissions.
Okay, I'm following.
Colombia cannot also claim those same emission reductions for their own national climate targets.
Oh, because Germany already bought them.
Exactly. So Colombia has to make a corresponding adjustment to their national ledger, basically deducting those credits so they aren't counted twice in the global tally.
So it's purely a balance sheet for carbon units crossing borders.
Precisely. This tool tracks authorized units. It does not measure physical restoration. It tells you literally nothing about the biodiversity of the forest, the health of the soil, or the actual financial stability of the project itself. It only applies where host authorization and international transfer are happening.
Which leaves a massive blind spot for anyone wanting to know if the trees are, actually surviving on the ground.
Exactly.
Which I assume is why we have the third instrument, which is an actual physical map.
Right.
So Aberystwyth University just released the figures for Global Mangrove Watch version 4.1. And this uses satellite remote sensing to map the extent of mangroves globally from 1985 all the way to 2025.
Yes.
And they found a net global gain of 47,720 hectares over that period. But wait, I have to push back on this a little bit. Satellites don't lie, right? If the satellite shows a net gain of almost 48,000 hectares of mangroves, why isn't that enough for a finance officer? Like, the trees are visibly right there.
The trees are there, yes, but the map cannot tell you why they are there.
Oh.
The lead researcher on this project explicitly cautions against using the map to claim project success. The map attributes no cause. It doesn't prove additionality.
Meaning it doesn't prove that a specific financial investment caused those specific trees to grow.
Right. Natural tidal shifts, changes in sediment flow, or just broader climatic variations could have caused a mangrove forest to expand naturally.
Okay.
A project developer might claim they restored 1,000 hectares in a specific bay, and the satellite might confirm, yes, the trees exist there now. But the satellite cannot prove the developer's actions caused the growth, and it certainly doesn't prove that the developer's financial model is sound or that they maintained it. The map's true function is to serve as an external screen, a baseline for physical reality, not a reporting destination for financial performance.
Okay, I am putting myself in the shoes of an investor right now, trying to allocate, say, $1 billion.
Right.
I have a government ledger that's basically just tracking paperwork. I have a carbon registry tracking unit transfers. And I have a satellite showing me leaves, but not causes.
Yeah, that's a tough spot.
If I look at the IUCN database, it shows that sub-Saharan Africa has reported an area equal to only 5% of its restoration pledges. Just 5%. So are they actually failing to plant the trees on the ground, or are they just lacking the administrative bandwidth to file all the complex paperwork required by the IUCN?
And what's fascinating here is that a reporting gap can so easily masquerade as a delivery gap.
Yeah.
This is the nightmare for finance officers trying to interpret inconsistent evidence. Different reporting systems produce apparently contradictory results because they're measuring fundamentally different things. A commitment is a promise. An activity is an action taken. A verified outcome is a proven ecological change.
This makes me think of Thailand's announcement this week. It seems like the perfect example of how these different measurements can be kind of gamed almost.
Absolutely.
So they're preparing a 15 billion Thai baht sustainability-linked bond. And this bond has two targets. And if the government misses them, the interest rate they have to pay out to investors goes up.
Right, there's a penalty.
Yeah, and one of those targets is to have 30% of their national territory under protected areas or conservation by 2030.
The mechanism of that bond is critical to look at here. Measuring 30% area coverage is simply measuring the size of a spatial boundary. It measures jurisdiction, not ecological condition.
So if I'm the Thai government and I'm facing a massive hike in my national debt interest payments, my incentive isn't necessarily to plant a healthy, thriving forest. My incentive is to find a pen, draw a giant circle around a third of the country on a map, declare it legally protected, and just hit the bond target to avoid the financial penalty.
Exactly. You could hit the financial target while completely ignoring whether the ecosystem inside that line you drew is actually degrading from illegal logging or drought or invasive species. This is why finance officers cannot rely solely on reported progress or spatial boundaries. They need independently verified delivery. The map showing nature doing its own thing, the government ledger tracking the paperwork, the bond tracking the spatial boundaries, none of them alone prove that your capital is actually reducing ecological risk.
To take this from, abstract finance theory and put it into a really stark, real-world scenario, the sources detail this test case unfolding right now in Indonesia.
Yeah, this is a very serious situation.
We are looking at the Indonesian fire season, specifically in their peatlands. And the Forestry Ministry detected 11,908 hotspots in a single 24-hour period. That was up from about 6,300 the day before.
Almost doubled?
Yeah. And the smoke and haze traveled so far that nearly 600 schools had to be shut down in neighboring Malaysia. The data shows roughly 182,000 hectares burned just in July. And heading into the fall and winter, there's a 90% chance of a severe El Niño, which means hotter, drier conditions that will just pour gasoline on this whole crisis.
And to understand why this specific crisis is a failure of the reporting versus delivery dynamic we've been talking about, we have to look at the history of these peatlands. Because we actually know how to prevent these fires.
Okay, I understand why a dry forest catches fire, but how does a swamp catch fire in the first place?
Yeah.
And why is the solution in the briefings always described as building dams?
Right, it seems counterintuitive. So peat is essentially thousands of years of partially decayed plant matter submerged in water. In its natural state, it is a massive wet swamp, and it's an incredible carbon sink.
Okay.
However, over decades, massive networks of canals were dug to drain the water out of these swamps to make the land usable for agriculture, mostly things like palm oil plantations.
Oh, I see.
So when you drain the water, that dense decayed plant matter dries out, and it essentially becomes a massive expanse of highly flammable kindling.
It's just a giant carbon bomb waiting for a spark.
Literally. So the restoration mechanism is actually pretty straightforward. You build blocks or dams inside those man-made drainage canals. The dams trap the water, the peat re-wets, and it turns back into a swamp. A wet swamp does not burn.
And there's hard data proving this works, right? A peer-reviewed study looked at 2019, comparing what worked and what didn't in these areas. It showed that re-wetting the peatlands by the Peatland Restoration Agency cut fire hotspots by 22%. And specifically, building those canal dams and deep wells accounted for a 38% reduction in hotspots.
Yeah, it was highly effective.
So they built the dams, the fires went down, and they officially claimed those hectares as restored on the national ledger.
Right, they filed the paperwork. But fast forward to a 2023 field check. A civil society group called Pantau Gambut went out to verify the actual condition of these assets.
Okay.
They physically sampled 77 of these canal blocks that were officially listed on the government's restoration platform as completed, and they found that 70% of them were damaged.
The dams literally broke.
The structures degraded, the water drained out again, the peat dried up, and the catastrophic fires returned. And to compound the disaster, the official mandate for the Peatland Restoration Agency actually expired at the end of 2024.
Wait, really?
Yes. The agency was dissolved, and its responsibilities were fragmented across 3 different ministries.
But the ledger still says those hectares were restored back in 2019 when the ribbon was cut on the dam.
Exactly.
But the reality on the ground is that the asset is destroyed and the forest is literally burning.
Yeah.
So the reported restoration just documented a past activity. It did absolutely nothing to reduce the underlying ongoing ecological risk.
Because area-based indicators, they just record the hectares that were re-wetted on the day the project finished. A broken canal dam is a massive maintenance liability. But a static reporting indicator cannot see a degraded asset. It just sees the check mark from 5 years ago.
This is like a corporation reporting record profits because they built a massive state-of-the-art new factory, right? The paperwork looks incredible to the shareholders. But they're hiding the fact that the factory's roof just caved in, the machinery is totally ruined, and production has completely stopped.
That's a perfect analogy.
So if we scale this disaster back up to the global level, what does this actually mean for all our international targets?
It demands profound skepticism regarding aggregate progress fires. When an entity like the IUCN celebrates 124.3 million hectares of reported restoration, we have to recognize what that aggregate number might be concealing. It can easily hide catastrophic gaps in physical delivery, structural durability, ongoing maintenance, and long-term financing.
Because if a significant portion of those 124 million hectares are functioning like the Indonesian peatlands, where the initial construction was completed, but the long-term maintenance was just entirely abandoned, then the global progress we are measuring is just a mirage.
Yes, exactly.
We have regional reporting weaknesses, like Africa's 5% figure creating data vacuums on one side, and we have local physical failures, like Indonesia's canal blocks, creating ecological disasters on the other. Both of these shatter any real confidence we might have in global commitments.
The current system heavily incentivizes claiming the construction and abandoning the maintenance. Politicians love cutting a ribbon for a new project. I mean, nobody holds a press conference to celebrate routine maintenance in year 4.
Right.
Which brings us to the operational reality. How do the people actually managing these projects, the project leads with their boots on the ground, how do they fix this disconnect?
The sources mention a phrase here for project managers. Conditional interoperability is the goal, which is a massive mouthful of jargon.
It is, yeah.
What does that actually look like for someone holding a shovel?
It simply means your local data spreadsheet needs to speak the exact same language as the national government's master database. If you are running a restoration program, you must format your reporting so it plugs directly into your national system. Because, again, as we discussed, a hectare absent from a government return is completely invisible to the global ledger. You have to do the paperwork so it counts.
But doing the paperwork doesn't keep the dam from breaking.
Exactly. Which is why project leads have to entirely change what they monitor internally. Your monitoring system cannot just track outputs, like how many hectares you covered or how many dams you built. It must actively track the ongoing condition of the asset, the ecological performance, the funding flows, and the long-term maintenance schedules.
So don't just report we built 50 dams. Report we have 50 intact dams holding water at a specific depth, and we have the secured budget to repair them if they degrade.
Project managers must build explicit, unbreakable links between the reported results, the budget allocations, and the physical conditions on the ground. You cannot just fund the construction of the canal block. You must secure the funding for its upkeep over decades.
But project leads can only do that if the people holding the purse strings demand it. Right. How do investors ensure their money isn't just buying a temporary PR win for an asset that is going to crumble in 3 years?
Well, investors have to undergo a fundamental shift in mindset. They must treat reporting as merely an input, not as proof of investable restoration performance by itself. An investor must demand traceable links between the finance, the activities, the verified outcomes, and the responsible land managers. Meaning, if a dam breaks in 2029, someone specific needs to be contractually on the hook to fix it.
What are the actual financial mechanics to enforce that level of accountability, though?
Investors need to utilize staged disbursements.
Okay.
So instead of writing a $10 million check on day 1, you release $2 million to build the dams, but you hold the remaining $8 million hostage, essentially. You only release the next tranche of money 3 years later when an independent auditor verifies that the dams are still holding water.
Oh, wow. You tie the liquidity directly to the survival of the asset.
Exactly. You implement strict maintenance provisions within the contracts, and you demand transparent chains of evidence to eliminate the uncertainty.
We have covered incredible ground today. We started with the very real illusion that drawing up a floor plan is the same as funding a house. We broke down how government ledgers, carbon accounting tools, and satellite maps all serve distinct, vital purposes, but none of them guarantee that a project is actually funded or functioning.
Right, and we examine how easily a finance officer can misinterpret inconsistent data if they confuse a reported political commitment with a verified ecological outcome.
And the tragedy unfolding in Indonesia's peatlands made it incredibly clear. A documented hectare on a ledger means absolutely nothing if the dam holding its water is broken and the agency responsible for fixing it has literally been dissolved.
As governments prepare for the Convention on Biological Diversity, COP17, in Yerevan, Armenia this October, the evidence from Indonesia provides a stark warning. Every single area target logged on a global ledger needs a matching maintenance indicator and a guaranteed locked-in budget line.
Because if it doesn't have that budget line, we are right back where we started, celebrating the paperwork while the forest burns.
Exactly.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to mull over, drawing directly from the dissolution of Indonesia's Peatland Restoration Agency. When a massive ecological asset is officially declared restored, but the government agency responsible for it is dissolved and the budget completely dries up, who actually inherits the long-term risk of nature?
That is the question.
Because if we do not figure out who owns the maintenance, our global ledgers aren't recording victories. They are just cataloging future liabilities. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.